This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Our goal with our videos is to empower you to be able to do the repairs on your own and save a whole lot of money and also get that great feeling of having fixed it by yourself. Today we have a GE or Fridgidaire dryer that it's an electric dryer that is always cutting out after about maybe 5 minutes of heat. And it also gives us an AD error for auto dry error. And if we look in here during the drying period, we see a weird bright light up in the upper corner. You can even see it when the door is open. And that is due to a broken element. The spring broke and it's touching the metal, so it's a short circuit, and it'll just stay on full blast all the time, and then the dryer will cut out from its thermal protector, so we have to change that element. So just unplug the 220 volt plug, took the top off by removing two Phillips head screws in the back, and I separated the power connectors. There's two of them here. Take those apart, and we took off one zip tie that was holding it into position. And we have to get off the front panel and then take out the tumbler. So we're using a Phillips head screwdriver to take out a Phillips head screw that's down about maybe 4 inches on the left side and the right side on the inside. We have to take out those two screws. Then there's two screws at the bottom of the front panel, and there's two screws in each corner of the top that we have to take out. So we're taking out those now. Once we get the front panel off, it's pretty easy to get the tumbler out, the drum, and then we have really good access to the element. The element's pretty cheap, inexpensive. I took out these two screws here at the bottom. I lifted up the dryer a little bit to support it to get to those screws a little bit easier to get to. Now I'm using a standard head screwdriver to give me some prying force to separate the front panel. Sometimes you can just lift it off. Lift up a little bit and pull back. This one's kind of stubborn, so I'm giving it a little help by pulling on the sides and the upper and lower part of the front panel. Now it came off pretty easily. So we're going to get the panel out of the way, and again we have good access now. I'm going to reach in on either side. I'm going to push the idler wheel to the left with my left hand, and my right hand I'm going to use it to take the belt off of the smaller motor pulley. And now I'm going to grab the belt and I'm going to lift up. You have to lift up pretty hard to make the rear bearing slip out of a cup that it's in. Sometimes it gets kind of stuck, so you have to use a fair amount of force. You have to push down on the dryer and lift up on the belt. So now that it's come loose, we're going to just take it out the front of the dryer, and you can see what used to fit in. There's a round ball, that's the bearing, it fits into a plastic cup. Here's the part number for the new element, which is just like a big spring. You can get these at Amazon, pretty cheap. Actually pretty easy to put in too. Once you get to this point where you have access, it just take you probably 10 minutes to be able to switch out this part. So here's the new one. Again, it just looks like a big spring. I'm using pliers to pull these two electrical spade connectors off of the old element. And I'm going to grab the metal part that's coming out. I'm going to twist it back and forth, and the metal fatigue will break off the metal tab. That's important because otherwise you can't pull it out like I just did. You have to essentially snap it. So you're going to go back and forth a few times until the metal gives up, it breaks, and then you can pull that right out. There we go. And now we're just going to lift them off of these ceramic holders one by one. Just kind of pull back, it'll come right off. You can see here's where it broke, and it was touching the metal here, and that creates a short circuit. So it was always on full blast. The thermostat couldn't control it. And then when it gets too hot, it has a thermal protector that'll just shut off the dryer. And it gave us, in this model, it gave us an AD error. When I had this off, I also put some high temperature grease in this cup. That's where the rear bearing sits, just so that later on it won't wear out and start to squeak. So here's our new one, our new element. Got the old one off. So first thing is we'll feed the new metal pieces through the ceramic holes here, and then we're going to put once we get them through, we're going to put the spade connectors on. It's going to help to hold them in position. We need to get those connectors on anyway because that's what brings power to the element. And make sure you have it unplugged, of course. I'm bending down a little bit on that to help hold it. Got the two connectors on. I'm going to just stretch the spring now around these ceramic insulators, and then I'll start to push them on. I'm going to do the upper ones first. I'm going to push them down onto the insulator, and they'll basically click into place. It's pretty cool. These insulators, sometimes they twist and get out of alignment, but they should basically form a nice circle. If they become perpendicular to the round circle, you just twist them so that they kind of match the circle. The important thing is when we put the element on that there's never a point where this element, the spring, touches the metal behind it, because that'll create a short circuit. That's why the insulators, they don't conduct electricity and they pull the element off of its frame. The frame is grounded, and that'll create a complete circuit, and the element will always be on full blast, which we don't want. So I have to twist this insulator to line it up, and I just push the spring right on. So it's pretty fun, pretty cool design. This element will probably last another 7-8 years before it breaks. Now once you have it on, just make sure again that there's no point where that spring is going to touch that metal behind it. Make sure there's a gap. Gap should be about 1/2 inch. So just doing that before we do the reassembly. The reassembly, after we clean things up, just involves bringing the drum back into alignment, lifting it a little bit above that cup, the ball bearing, I'm sorry, the ball, and then just dropping the ball down into the cup. That's the rear bearing. We're going to line the belt up on the same mark. We can see the mark it left on the drum. We line that up. I'm going to put this little thing back in, and it basically just holds the drum in position. Putting a Phillips head screw in to hold it. Now I can string the belt. I'm going to reach in with both hands, and I'm going to loop it over the idler wheel and pull the idler wheel to the left with my left hand, and use my right hand to push the belt over the smaller motor pulley. Now I'm going to push in and twist the drum a few revolutions to make sure that that belt won't come off. If you reassemble and don't do this, sometimes the belt will slip off. That's a pain in the neck. So good to get this done before you do a full reassembly. Before I put this ducting back on, I notice there's a lot of lint inside here. I want to get that out because that's going to block airflow and make the dryer work a lot harder. Also, any lint laying around is flammable, so we don't want to have a fire danger. So now I'm putting the front panel back into position, lining it up. And on this model, you have to kind of lift the drum up onto the front part, which is called the front bearing. The back part of the front panel, there's a felt piece called the front bearing, and you have to lift the drum up onto that, and then you're going to push the front panel in against the frame. You have to lift the top part of this front panel up over the frame. So you can see here, push it in, and now we're going to add a Phillips head screw here on our left side and then one on the right side. Probably want to put it in by hand first, get it started. It's kind of hard to line up the holes sometimes, and then finish it off with the Phillips head screwdriver. Really like these Milwaukee power screwdrivers. Had this for a long time. It's really tough. We're putting the two screws in on the top, upper right, upper left. After that, we can push the two electrical connectors, the modular connectors, back together. That brings power to the control board. So Sometimes these screws are tricky to line up. I use a pointy object to help me line them up before I put in the screws. This tool called the owl, like AWL, or anything, like you can even use a nail to help line it up and then put the screws in. These Phillips head screws are all pretty much the same size, except for the one that holds on this little white plastic thing in the very center. So it's pretty hard to get them mixed up. So we're going to put those connectors together again. We lifted up the front panel and we're putting on the two bottom Phillips head screws. It's good to lift up on that panel at the bottom to help line them up. And we're almost done. We're going to get that thing out from underneath. The top panel goes back on, and then we slide it toward the front. We have to add two Phillips head screws on the back to hold it on. We reach back, rehook the 220 volt plug. Make sure you get it in the right way. It only goes one way. If you try to put it in some other way, it won't fit. And make sure you fully seat it. Push it all the way in. Tap it until it's all the way as far as it'll go. There we go. We can give it a test. Alright, so make sure the door's closed. We'll set it for normal. Press start. We're just going to peer in there and see if that orange glow now is a little bit more balanced. Not all at the very top. Yeah, it looks good. So back to normal. Make sure this filter can sit down. There's a little gap there, which is common with this model. We're going to reach in with a long pointy screwdriver and remove the lint that's sitting on a plastic shelf in there that's kind of in the way. And that filter should be able to sit all the way down flush. We're going to remove some of this lint that's on the filter. And we just slide it in there. There we go. It's all the way flush. We got it. So that got this dryer back to normal. Probably get another 7-8 years out of that. And I really appreciate you guys watching. Hope it helps you with your dryer. And please subscribe when you get a chance, and we'll send you a bunch of repair videos. Thanks for watching.